The night my sister humiliated me in front of 50 people should have crushed me. It really should have. But instead, it made everything crystal clear. My name's Carter. I'm 31. And if there's one thing I've learned over the last few years, it's that nothing divides a family quite like money. Especially when you're the one who has it. And they think they deserve it more than you do. I wasn't always the rich one, though my parents like to pretend I came out of the womb holding a trust fund. The truth is, I was just the quiet kid who stayed out of everyone's way, got decent grades, went off to college on a scholarship, and built something real when no one was paying attention. Meanwhile, my sister, Ava, the golden child, could do no wrong, even when she was lighting metaphorical fires and walking away like she didn't smell the smoke. Ava's 3 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was the favorite. My parents used to say it wasn't true, that they loved us equally, but it was always in that rehearsed, PR-safe kind of way that made it worse. Like they were trying to convince themselves. She was the bubbly, photogenic one, always dragging me into her social media posts when we were kids, and always knowing exactly how to twist our parents around her finger. When she didn't get into her first choice college, they blamed the admissions office. When she maxed out a credit card at 22, they paid it off and blamed predatory lending. When I turned down dinner because I had work early the next day, I was selfish. But when Ava ghosted on a family gathering because she was too emotionally drained from a breakup, she was doing her best. Still, I kept the peace. It was easier. I moved out at 18, took on 2 jobs while studying computer science, and eventually landed a contract job at a mid-sized tech firm. That contract turned into a full-time position, and a few years later, I started my own consulting company. I wasn't flashy about it. I lived below my means, drove the same car for 8 years, didn't post about it online. But somehow word got out. Maybe Mom let something slip to Ava. Maybe it was when I bought the duplex and rented out the other half. Doesn't matter. Once Ava knew, things changed. Suddenly, I was the ATM. At first, it was little things. Carter, do you mind covering dinner? I left my card in the car. Can you float me for this vet bill? I'll pay you back Friday. Hey, you know that coding stuff. Can you help my friend's startup for a weekend? They can't pay you, but it'd be great exposure. You get the idea. And I said yes. A lot. Too much, honestly. Because there was still a part of me that wanted to be accepted, that wanted to believe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me as part of the family, not just the quiet kid who disappeared and got lucky. I think the turning point came about a year and a half ago when my parents hosted a big family dinner and accidentally forgot to include me in the group photos. Like, literally every group photo. I was sitting right there. But Ava organized them, and somehow I was always either pouring drinks or clearing plates when the camera came out. I brushed it off, smiled through it, told myself I was overthinking things. Until I caught my dad cropping me out of a candid he posted on Facebook. Like he physically zoomed in and reposted the version with just him, Mom, and Ava. The caption? Family is everything. Still, I kept my mouth shut. I figured they were just worried about me. Maybe I reminded them of their own failures. Or maybe it was easier for them to keep treating me like an outsider, because otherwise they'd have to admit how often they overlooked me growing up. Whatever the reason, I stayed distant, but I didn't cut ties. Part of me still wanted in. Then came Ava's engagement. She met this guy, Brandon, a corporate finance bro with veneers and a jawline that looked carved out of marble. On paper, he was perfect. Ivy League, big paycheck, all the charm of a game show host. But something about him always felt performative, like he was playing the role of fiancé rather than being someone real underneath. I never voiced it. That would have been suicide in our family. Ava was head over heels, and Mom was already Pinterest boarding centerpieces before the ring hit her finger. They got engaged 6 months in and set the date for the following summer. That's when the requests started rolling in. Quiet at first. Ava wanted help with a website for the wedding registry. Sure, no problem. Then she asked if I could design the wedding invitations. Her exact words were, "Since you're all techie and graphic design adjacent." I politely declined. She pouted. A week later, Mom called. The venue Ava wanted had a payment deadline, non-refundable, and they were just a little short. I asked how short. 25 grand. I wish I could say I laughed. That I hung up right there. But no, I hesitated. Then said I'd think about it. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe some warped sense of obligation. Maybe I just didn't want to deal with the fallout if I said no. Maybe part of me still believed that money could buy peace. That if I did this one big thing, they'd finally treat me like I mattered. So I wired the money. No contract, no acknowledgement, not even a thank you card. I just sent it. And for about 2 weeks, things were weirdly good. Ava texted me updates. My mom added me to a group chat. My dad even called me one evening, just to catch up. I should have known it wouldn't last. The rehearsal dinner was held at this upscale garden-style restaurant just outside the city. Private patio, fairy lights strung overhead, live violinist playing acoustic pop covers. Very Pinterest meets influencer energy. Everyone was dressed to the nines, and Ava looked stunning. I'll give her that. She had this way of commanding attention, and she was absolutely glowing. I stayed toward the back, nursing a drink and avoiding small talk. But when Ava clinked her glass for a toast, I figured it was time to lean in and pretend. She stood up, beaming, and began handing out little white boxes to each member of the wedding party. I wasn't expecting one. Technically, I wasn't in the party, but I figured maybe something small. After all, I'd paid for the venue. Something symbolic, even. Just acknowledgement. She went down the line. Gifts for her bridesmaids, for Brandon's groomsmen, for their planner, their photographer, even Brandon's younger cousin who was acting as ring bearer. Ava handed each one their box personally, with a little anecdote, a warm smile, or a hug. And then she got to me. She paused, looked me up and down, and smiled. "Oh," she said, tilting her head like a cartoon villain. "You're not really part of the family anymore, remember?" The table fell quiet. Brandon chuckled nervously. My mom cleared her throat. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "Excuse me?" I asked. Ava laughed. "Relax, Carter. I'm just teasing. Gosh, you always take things so seriously." But there was something in her tone. That smug, sharp edge she always used when she wanted to remind me where I stood. I nodded slowly, tried to smile, took a sip of my drink to hide the burning behind my eyes. Then I stood up, walked outside, and pulled out my phone. The night air was cool against my face, but my palms were slick with sweat. I stepped away from the lights, down a small garden path, and called my bank. "Hi," I said quietly. "I need to cancel a wire transfer." It was made under duress, and I believe I was misled about the nature of the payment. As I waited on hold, I could hear the sound of laughter drifting from the patio behind me. Glasses clinking. Ava's voice rising above the others. A cake being wheeled out. The violinist transitioning into something romantic and upbeat. I let it all fade into background noise. Then the line clicked, and the agent came on. And that's when everything began to shift. The bank representative's voice was calm and measured, walking me through the verification steps. I gave them everything they needed, the transaction ID, the date, the amount. I explained, deliberately, carefully, that I had wired the funds under false pretenses and that the payment hadn't yet been processed to the final recipient. There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Gray," she said finally, "this wire hasn't cleared. It's still pending in our outgoing queue. We can submit a recall request. But please understand, it may not be honored if the recipient's bank has already processed it on their end." "I understand," I said. "Submit the recall." I hung up and slid my phone back into my pocket, then stood there in the dark garden walkway, breathing in silence. Something shifted in me during that moment. It wasn't rage or bitterness, at least not yet. It was more like a long, silent exhale of every ounce of denial I'd been clinging to for the last 10 years. All the times I let things slide. All the moments I convinced myself it wasn't worth making a fuss. That I was overreacting. That family meant compromise. What a joke. When I returned to the party, the cake had been cut, the photos were being taken, and nobody even noticed I'd left. Not even Ava. I rejoined the crowd like a ghost, smiling just enough, nodding at people I didn't care to speak to, my thoughts a million miles away. I stayed until the end, even helped load boxes into the planner's van. It was easier that way. Keep the mask on. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you storm out. But something had changed. I could feel it. The next morning, I woke up to a message from my mom. "Mom, hey honey, just wanted to say it was so nice seeing you last night. Ava told me you seemed a little distant. Everything okay? Big weekend coming up." I stared at the message. Ava told her I seemed distant. Like that was the story she wanted to craft. I typed a reply. Deleted it. Tried again. Deleted that too. There was no point. Not yet. Instead, I went for a walk, grabbed a coffee, and spent the afternoon going through my old text messages with Ava. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to remind myself I wasn't crazy. But it was all there. Every conversation was one way. Requests for money. Favors. Subtle guilt trips wrapped in emojis and LOL love yous. Not once had she asked how I was doing. Not once had she said thank you. Just entitlement, layered with fake warmth. The rehearsal dinner had been the final straw, but it wasn't the breaking point. That came 2 days later at my parents' house. They were hosting a pre-wedding brunch for close family and asked me to come early to help set up. I arrived right on time, brought coffee for everyone, and walked in through the side door like I always had. The kitchen smelled like waffles and scrambled eggs. My mom was at the stove, wearing a floral apron. My dad was fiddling with the stereo in the dining room. I set the coffee down on the counter and said, "Morning." My mom turned and gave me a half smile. "Oh, hi, Carter. Can you actually help set the tables outside?" Ava wanted to do a garden layout. "No, thank you. No, so glad you're here. Just a task. A roll." I nodded and stepped outside, where 2 folding tables were already half covered in mismatched linens and floral centerpieces. I spent the next 20 minutes arranging everything by myself. Plates, cutlery, chairs, water pitchers. No one came out to help. By the time I came back in, Ava and Brandon had arrived. She was wearing a white sundress and designer sunglasses, already posing for selfies with her bridesmaids. Brandon was recounting some story about his golf handicap to my dad. Nobody acknowledged me until Ava saw the coffee tray. She wrinkled her nose. "Oh, Carter, I would have texted you. We all ordered oat milk lattes from that cute place near Brandon's." I blinked. "Okay." She turned back to her friends like I wasn't even there. We sat down to eat. It was one of those long, awkward brunches where every conversation feels performative. Ava's friends laughed at everything Brandon said. My parents nodded dutifully along. I just picked at my food, trying not to react when Ava dropped casual barbs my way. "Brandon's parents are so involved," she said at one point, locking eyes with my mom. "It's been so nice having real family support through all this." I looked at my plate. My fork paused in midair. My mom chuckled uncomfortably. My dad said, "Well, we've tried our best." "No, I mean emotional support," Ava clarified. "Not just writing checks." That was when I stood up. Quietly, without a word. I didn't flip the table or make a scene. I just picked up my plate, carried it into the kitchen, rinsed it, and walked out the side door. No one followed me. No one even called my name. Back in my car, I sat for a full 5 minutes before starting the engine. I wasn't angry. I was numb, like something had shut off inside me. That little voice, the one that always whispered, "Maybe they'll come around. Maybe this time will be different," had gone silent. And in its place was something colder, sharper, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up combing through the payment confirmation emails, pulling up screenshots of text conversations, printing out wire transfer receipts, itemized expenses. Every favor, every payment, every request. I made a folder and labeled it Ava's Wedding Contributions. I wasn't sure what I planned to do with it yet, but I knew one thing. They weren't going to get away with this. Then came the betrayal. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at 4 p.m. The morning of, I woke up early, showered, dressed in a charcoal suit, and grabbed the gift bag I'd prepared. Inside was a custom engraved pin I'd ordered for Brandon and a leather-bound wedding planner notebook for Ava. Nothing fancy, just thoughtful. I figured if nothing else, I could be civil. I arrived at the venue around 3:15, flashed my invite at the front desk, and made my way to the designated family seating area. I was one of the first to arrive. The garden had been transformed into a Pinterest fever dream. Gold-accented chairs, cascading floral arches, a violinist warming up in the corner. I took my seat and waited. Around 3:30, my parents arrived. They looked surprised to see me. "Carter," my mom said cautiously. "Oh good, you made it." "I RSVP'd," I said calmly. "Why wouldn't I?" She gave me a tight smile and sat 2 rows ahead, beside my dad. I stayed seated, scanned the crowd. The violinist kept playing. The guests kept trickling in. But something felt off. At 3:45, the wedding planner walked over and tapped me on the shoulder. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Are you Carter?" "Yes." "I'm so sorry, but I've been instructed to ask you to move to the overflow seating area. Immediate family only in this section." I stared at her. I'm the bride's brother. Her face twitched. I understand. I was just told. I wired $25,000 to pay for this venue, I said, keeping my voice low. And you're asking me to move? She looked genuinely rattled. I don't know anything about that, sir. I was just told by the bride to. It's fine, I cut in. I'll move. I stood, walked calmly to the back, near the food setup, took a seat behind a pillar, out of view. My hands were shaking. 15 minutes later, Ava walked down the aisle. She looked stunning, radiant, like something out of a bridal magazine. And I felt absolutely nothing. The ceremony was short, the vows scripted, the kiss rehearsed. Applause, pictures, champagne flutes passed around like candy. I didn't move, just watched, like a guest at a show I didn't audition for. Then came the reception. Assigned seating. I was placed at a back table with Brandon's coworkers, people I'd never met. Everyone else was grouped by family or close friends. Even my cousin, who lived in another state and hadn't seen Ava in years, was seated closer than I was. Dinner came and went. Toasts were made. The DJ started playing. I stayed seated. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. At the head table, my gift bag was missing. I waited. Watched. Nothing. After another 20 minutes, I walked over to the table, discreetly checked under Ava's chair. Gone. I asked one of the servers if they'd seen a small black bag with gold ribbon. Oh, she said. The bride said it was a mistake and had it thrown out. My chest tightened. Thrown out? Yes. I think she said it was from a vendor. My mouth went dry. I walked out of the reception hall, into the cool night air, and stood there on the stone path. Behind me, the music played. Laughter rang out. Glasses clinked. And I knew, right then and there, that they'd made a mistake. A big one. Because what Ava didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the recall had been successful. The wire transfer had bounced back 2 hours ago. And the venue? The one with the unpaid invoice. Yeah, they were about to find out. But that part comes later. First, I needed to make one more call. The night of the wedding ended the way I should have expected it to. Nobody noticed I was gone. Not one text. Not one missed call. I left before the first dance, sat in my car with the engine running, and just stared at the road for nearly an hour. Not driving. Not crying. Just empty. Like every emotion had burned itself out and left nothing but ash behind. That night was supposed to be a celebration. Maybe not for me, but for the people I grew up with. People I bent over backward to support. And yet, I felt like a stranger at my own sister's wedding. An ATM with a face. I drove home in silence. No music. No podcasts. Just the occasional hum of tires and the flicker of traffic lights. And when I walked into my apartment, sleek, clean, the place I'd worked so hard to build, something cracked. I dropped my keys, sat down on the kitchen floor, and felt this sudden, suffocating weight. Not just sadness, not just anger, but this deep, pulsing loneliness. The kind that doesn't come from being alone, but from realizing how deeply you've been misunderstood, disregarded, erased. I kept replaying Ava's smirk in my head. You're not really part of the family anymore, remember? She meant it. And somehow, that line hurt more than anything she'd ever done. Over the next few days, I didn't go to work. Emails piled up. Calls went unanswered. I wasn't spiraling. I was just tired. Decades of emotional labor had finally hit their limit. I ordered takeout, binged old sitcoms, barely showered. I'd always been the reliable one, the put-together one, the guy with the solutions. But now, I couldn't even answer the door without anxiety prickling up my spine. The silence from my family was deafening. No one reached out. Not even after the venue followed up about the missing payment. I got a call from their event manager 3 days after the wedding, politely inquiring about the status of the wire. I told her the payment had been recalled due to misrepresentation and that the responsibility for the remaining balance now fell on the bride and groom. She didn't sound surprised, not even upset, just tired, like she'd seen this kind of mess before. That same night, Ava texted me for the first time since the wedding. Ava, hey, did something happen with the payment for the venue? They said it didn't go through. Kind of freaking out RN. Can you call me? No apology. No acknowledgement. Just straight to the problem. I didn't reply. The next morning, I got a group text from my mom. Mom, Carter, I don't know what you're doing, but Ava's very upset. You promised to help with the venue. It's not fair to back out now. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even concern. Just you're wrong. Fix it. And that's when something shifted. I reread her message, then opened the group chat history. It was the same pattern over and over. Ava messes up, I patch it. Ava needs something, I deliver. Ava wants support, I provide it. Even when she ignores me, belittles me, forgets me. I realized I'd been clinging to a version of family that didn't exist. Not for me. Maybe it never had. And so, instead of replying, I hit leave group chat. Then I blocked Ava's number. And then, I turned everything off. I spent the next week offline. No social media. No emails. Just me, a stack of paperbacks I hadn't touched in years, and an old playlist from college that reminded me who I used to be before I got wrapped up in trying to please people who saw me as disposable. I didn't know it then, but that week was the beginning of something. The breaking of a pattern I hadn't realized I'd been repeating my entire adult life. People-pleasing, shrinking, making myself small so others could feel bigger. I started going for walks again. Long ones. No destination, just movement. I found a coffee shop 2 blocks over I'd never noticed, run by a woman named Trina, who made the best espresso I'd ever tasted. She had this quiet, observant way of speaking that reminded me of myself. We started talking. Slowly. At first it was about the weather. Then books. Then tech. Turns out her brother was trying to launch a small e-commerce site, but had no clue how to set it up. You used to code, right? She asked one morning. I still do, I said. That conversation stuck with me. So when I got home, I opened my laptop and looked at the website her brother had thrown together. It was rough. Basic WordPress template, no SSL, cluttered UI. But the idea was solid. Custom handmade leather accessories. Locally sourced. Artisan quality. So I fixed it. For free. I didn't tell anyone. Just sent him the updated version with a note. Saw potential. Hope this helps. He responded a day later with a long, grateful message and asked if I'd be interested in helping full-time. I said no. I already had a company to run. But I gave him some tools, a roadmap, and a few video tutorials I'd made back when I was mentoring junior devs. Something about that exchange lit a spark I hadn't felt in months. I started checking my work email again. Turns out, I'd missed 3 client inquiries and 2 proposal requests during my detachment week. But instead of panicking, I approached it differently. I streamlined my responses, set up auto-replies, hired a virtual assistant. For the first time in years, I stopped trying to do everything myself. And it worked. Within a month, I closed 2 new contracts. One with a mid-tier fintech startup, another with a boutique marketing firm that needed custom back-end tools. Both paid well. More importantly, they respected boundaries. No late-night texts. No scope creep. Just clean business. I reinvested a chunk of the revenue into upgrading my workspace. New monitors. Better chair. Rewired my home network. And I started sleeping better. Eating better. Laughing more. The family? Still radio silence. Until the photos dropped. Ava had hired some Instagram-famous wedding photographer to shoot the entire event. Highly edited, overly filtered, painfully staged photos flooded her feed exactly 1 month post-wedding. Each caption more performative than the last. Forever starts now. Surrounded by love. The people who've always had my back. Every shot was perfect. Every person in them was curated. And not once was I in any of them. Not even the candid crowd shots. They'd scrubbed me out completely. And that hurt more than I expected. Not because I wanted clout. Not because I needed to be in the photos. But because it confirmed what I'd been denying for so long. They wanted me gone. Or rather, they wanted the benefits of me, without the presence of me. So I did the last thing I hadn't yet done. I changed my emergency contact. I'd never thought about it before. My form still listed my mom. My medical profile. My banking info. Even my business incorporation paperwork. But now, I switched it all to my business partner, Dan. A guy I'd met 5 years ago at a tech convention who'd become one of my most loyal collaborators. He knew my passwords, knew my situation, and most importantly, he showed up. The same day I made the change, I got a message from Trina at the cafe. Hey, just a heads up, your sister stopped by. Asked if I'd seen you lately. My stomach turned. What did you say? I replied. I said you were doing great. That you looked happy. She didn't like that. I chuckled. A week later, the text started again. This time from Brandon. Brandon, hey man, not sure what happened with the payment, but Ava's been super stressed. Can we talk? I ignored it. Brandon, venue says we owe $25K. We assumed that was covered. Kind of feel like you're ghosting us. Still ignored it. Then the email came. Subject, urgent, venue lawsuit threat. In it, Ava explained, in her usual dramatic flair, that the venue was threatening legal action, that their credit cards were maxed out from the honeymoon, and that she didn't understand why I was being so vindictive. She ended the message with, "You're seriously going to destroy your sister's wedding over a misunderstanding?" And that's when I smiled. Really smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Because she still didn't get it. It wasn't about the money. Not anymore. It was about finally understanding that some relationships only survive as long as you're willing to betray yourself to maintain them. And I was done betraying myself. But before I could decide what to do next, I got a call that changed everything. It was from a lawyer. Not mine. The venue's. They were suing for breach of contract. And guess whose name was listed on the original payment agreement as the guarantor? Mine. Even though the funds hadn't cleared. Even though I'd submitted the recall. Even though I hadn't signed anything beyond the wire form. Apparently, Ava had listed my name without telling me. Bank info, signature scanned from an old document, forged. And now? Now it was my problem. Or so they thought. And that was the final match. Because I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to pull the whole rotten foundation down. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, expensive. My name was printed across the front in a serif typeface that practically screamed, "We mean business." I opened it on a Wednesday afternoon while sipping espresso and listening to a lo-fi playlist on my balcony. I wasn't even surprised. Just cold. Focused. Inside, a formal notice from the venue's legal team, informing me that I was being held personally responsible for breach of contract and owed the remaining balance of $25,000, plus administrative fees. They claimed I had entered a verbal agreement to cover the cost of the venue. They referenced my original wire attempt as proof of intent. They claimed I had rescinded the payment in bad faith, causing financial damages. But here's the thing. I had never signed anything. No agreement. No formal invoice addressed to me. I had made the wire transfer voluntarily, and I had also recalled it before it cleared. I had the call logs, the confirmation emails, the screenshots. But someone had used my information to manufacture consent. Someone had used my name on a signed contract without me ever seeing it. There was only one person with access to that kind of detail. Ava. She had done it without blinking. Without guilt. Without even asking. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. I was sharp now. Because this wasn't just a family spat anymore. This was fraud. Identity theft. And I had proof. See, I'd learned a few things from running a consulting firm. One of them? Always document everything. Every favor, every transfer, every client interaction, logged and timestamped. I'd also developed a habit of screenshotting conversations and uploading them to an encrypted drive. It was just good practice. You never know when someone's going to lie with a straight face. So that night, I started building my case. I printed the wire recall confirmation. I dug up the email thread where Ava had asked me to help with the venue, but never once specified how. I downloaded my call history with the bank. I combed through the wedding planner's website until I found the actual contract. It required 2 signatures, one from the couple and one from the financial guarantor. The signature under my name? Not mine. It looked similar, sure, but I don't cross my T's like that. And I always sign with a slight upward slant. This one dipped downward. And the R in Carter was wrong, looped weirdly, like someone had tried to mimic it from memory. So I called in a favor. My friend Michelle used to work in forensic accounting. She now freelanced in document verification and handwriting analysis. I sent her the contract and 3 legit samples of my signature from past business filings. 2 days later, she replied with a PDF analysis. Her conclusion? The signature is highly likely to be forged. Differences in pressure, line weight, letter formation, and slant. The probability of this being the same signer is below 5%. Boom. I wasn't done. I called the venue and asked to speak with their billing manager. I calmly explained that I had never signed any document agreeing to pay for the venue. That the initial wire transfer had been an informal gesture of goodwill, not a legally binding obligation. The manager, a tired-sounding woman named Lillian, sighed audibly. "You're not the first to say that," she said. "We've had vendors contact us this week asking about payments they were supposedly guaranteed." I perked up. "Wait, vendors?" "Yeah, the florist, the makeup team, even the live string quartet. Apparently, they were all told you were covering their fees." My stomach dropped. "You're kidding." I wish I were. I thanked her, hung up, and spent the next hour calling each vendor listed on the wedding website. It was the same story over and over. Ava had told them her brother Carter was handling payment. When I asked if there were any signed documents, most said no, just informal promises, texts, and emails. But one vendor, a photographer named Caleb, said he had received a signed contract, and he still had it. He emailed me a scan. Same signature. Same forged scribble. It was worse than I thought. She hadn't just used my generosity. She'd weaponized it. Built an entire financial ecosystem on the assumption that I'd fund her fantasy wedding, without my knowledge or consent. And now, the whole thing was collapsing. Good. But revenge wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about making them feel what I'd felt. So I made a plan. Step 1. Secure myself legally. I contacted my lawyer, Marissa, a brilliant woman who'd helped me incorporate my business 5 years earlier. I explained everything. The fake contract. The vendors. The threats. She listened carefully, then asked, "Do you have everything in writing?" "Yes," I said. "Perfect. Then we're not playing defense anymore." She drafted a cease and desist letter addressed to Ava and Brandon, demanding they stop misrepresenting me in financial dealings and warning them of the legal consequences of continued fraud. She also sent one to the venue, explaining that I had been impersonated and was not liable for any unpaid balances. Step 2. Gather allies. I called Caleb, the photographer, and thanked him for his honesty. Then I explained what had happened, that I hadn't agreed to pay him, that Ava had used my name without consent. He wasn't surprised. Apparently, Ava had been cold and condescending the entire day and never even tipped him. "Tell you what," he said. "If this goes public, I won't stop it." I smiled. Then I called Trina, the cafe owner, and gave her the short version. She just said, "What do you need?" "Names," I said. "And ears." She pulled a few strings. Turns out, one of her regulars was a freelance journalist who occasionally wrote for a popular lifestyle site. She connected us. Step 3. Bait the trap. I sent Ava a short, polite email. Subject: Contract clarification. Ava, I've been contacted by multiple vendors regarding unpaid balances and contracts signed in my name. Please confirm that you did not use my information or signature without my consent. If this was a misunderstanding, I'm willing to give you a chance to clarify it directly, privately. But I need full transparency. Carter. No threats. No anger. Just bait. She responded within 2 hours. Ava. OMG, Carter, stop being dramatic. It was just a placeholder. Everyone does it. You said you were helping, so we assumed you'd cover a few things. Don't act like a victim now. There it is. An admission. Casual, dismissive, arrogant. Marissa highlighted the key phrase. We assumed you'd cover a few things. She said that in court, it could qualify as a tacit acknowledgement of guilt. Step 4. The setup. I had an old group of college friends, 3 guys and a woman I used to build apps with. We'd always joked about doing a reunion project. So I reached out, pitched them the idea of a short web miniseries about family betrayal and financial fraud, loosely based on real events. They were in. We built a landing page. Sleek, tasteful, anonymous. We called it The Invisible ATM, a series about people who are treated like wallets instead of relatives. Episode 1. The $25,000 wedding I wasn't invited to. We changed the names, altered the faces, but the details were dead on. We even included dramatic reenactments, with actors. I wasn't doing this for clout. I wasn't trying to ruin Ava's life. I just wanted people to understand the pattern, the manipulation, the pain of being used and discarded. And maybe, just maybe, give other Carters out there the clarity to walk away. The site went live on a Friday. By Sunday, it had over 30,000 views. By Monday morning, it was trending on Reddit under r/pro-revenge. The comments were brutal, supportive, heartbreaking. People sharing their own stories. People naming the behavior. I didn't post the story, but someone did. Maybe it was Caleb. Maybe one of the vendors. Maybe a distant cousin who connected the dots. But the damage was done. And Ava? She had no idea what was coming next. Because remember, this was just the setup. The real revenge hadn't even begun. The morning Ava finally called me, her voice was unrecognizable. Gone was the confident, dismissive tone she'd wielded like a dagger for years. Instead, it was trembling, breathy, like someone who'd just watched their house burn down while holding the match. "Carter," she said. What did you do?" I had just poured my second coffee, sitting at the edge of my balcony with my laptop open, reading another article featuring the invisible ATM, our little anonymous web series that had now crossed 250,000 views in just under 10 days. It had hit a nerve. People weren't just watching, they were talking, sharing, writing blog posts, quoting the episodes. Episode 3 had dropped the night before, forged signatures and family silence. I took a slow sip and let her sit in the silence. She started again. People are messaging me. Brandon's boss saw it. Clients at the salon keep asking questions. My mother-in-law won't stop calling me. Carter, what is this? It's a story, I said calmly. Inspired by true events. You made me look like a criminal. I raised an eyebrow. Did I? She hesitated. That pause told me everything. She hadn't expected pushback. Not from me. Not after years of me being the quiet one, the helper, the safety net. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, softer now. You weren't supposed to take it personally. It was just a wedding. You said you'd help. I just filled in the gaps. Ava, you committed fraud. It wasn't, she stopped herself. It was a misunderstanding. I stood, carried my mug inside, and shut the balcony door behind me. Then I sat down at my desk and opened the folder labeled evidence. It was overflowing now. PDFs, screenshots, email chains, voice recordings. Her misunderstanding was documented in more detail than a corporate audit. You forged my name on multiple contracts, I said, pulling up her last email again, the one with the phrase, we assumed you'd cover a few things. You signed a financial guarantee I never agreed to. You used my name, my reputation, and my silence. You think I wanted to? She snapped suddenly, voice rising. Do you know the pressure I was under? Do you know what it's like having people expect a perfect wedding? Brandon's family is loaded. They were judging me from day one. I was drowning, Carter. And you had the means to help. There it was. Entitlement, hiding under a flimsy blanket of guilt. You didn't ask, I replied. You assumed. You manipulated. You exploited. There was a long pause on the line. Then she asked, what do you want? That question was meant to reset the narrative, bring things back into her control. The old Carter would have flinched, softened, maybe offered to settle it quietly. But I wasn't him anymore. I want you to face the consequences, I said. You're going to sue me? She spat. No, I said, but someone else is. And with that, I hung up. Because what Ava hadn't realized was that the venue, after receiving the cease and desist from my lawyer, along with the forged signature analysis and Ava's incriminating emails, had decided to file their own lawsuit. Not against me, but against her. They were suing her and Brandon for fraud, breach of contract, and damages to their business reputation due to bounced payments and misrepresentation. And since several vendors had followed suit after I forwarded them the same package of proof, Ava and Brandon were now facing 3 small claims suits and 1 very large civil case. They were also blacklisted by several regional wedding vendor groups. Word spread fast in those circles. Brandon's boss, who had seen the ATM series and connected the dots, called him into a meeting to discuss company reputation. He wasn't fired immediately, but his upcoming promotion was put on indefinite hold. Ava's salon business took a hit too. Her client list, once filled with influencer hopefuls and bridezillas, thinned out within weeks. She made her account private. She stopped posting. And I heard through Trina that Ava had been complaining about internet trolls ruining her life. Funny, I never once said her name. As for my parents, they didn't call. Not for a while. I figured they were stewing. Or embarrassed. Or both. But about 3 weeks after Ava's meltdown, I got a letter in the mail. From my mom. It was handwritten. That surprised me. She'd always been more of a Hallmark and a gift card kind of person. The letter was long, meandering, half apology, half justification. She said things like, we didn't realize how much we leaned on you. And families make mistakes. And you've always been the strong one, Carter. As if strength was an excuse for being ignored, for being used. She asked if I'd consider moving past this. There was no mention of the forged documents. No real accountability. Just a vague hope that time would fix what she didn't want to face. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the letter to Marissa and asked her to scan it for tone in case they tried to spin it later. She laughed and called it classic image management. She wasn't wrong. In the meantime, the invisible ATM exploded. The journalist Trina had introduced me to had written a full feature on it, anonymized, of course, about financial abuse within families. It went viral. Suddenly, people weren't just watching the episodes. They were sharing their own stories. Siblings who paid off debts they never owed. Children who covered their parents' bills out of guilt. Cousins who were guilt-tripped into paying for weddings, tuition, even funerals. The world was full of invisible ATMs. And they were finally speaking up. I never claimed authorship. I didn't want fame. But within my own circle, word got around. Old college friends reached out. Clients congratulated me, without saying why. Dan, my business partner, pulled me aside after a quarterly review and said, "I don't know how much of it is real, but man, whoever wrote that has balls." I just smiled. About 2 months after the wedding, Ava and Brandon finally settled out of court with the venue. Quietly. Expensively. They were forced to take out a personal loan. I heard Ava sold her engagement ring to cover part of the debt. Brandon's Instagram, once filled with boss life, photos, and gym selfies, went dark. Their dream wedding turned into a financial sinkhole. Their image shattered. And me? I rebuilt everything they tried to break. Emotionally, financially, socially. I started mentoring again, teaching young developers how to protect themselves, not just from bad clients, but from bad relationships. I hired 2 new people. I took weekends off. I joined a book club. I started dating again, slowly, carefully. No masks. No shrinking. I became someone I respected. Not because I got revenge, but because I finally chose me. The last time I heard Ava's voice, it was in a voicemail she left after the dust had settled. Her tone was flat. Tired. "I don't even know who you are anymore," she said. "You've changed." She meant it as an insult. But to me, it was the greatest compliment she could have given. Because she was right. I had changed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sorry. Not one bit.